imagined two mirrors facing each other in an empty room. Not ordinary mirrors, but mirrors that have learned to see themselves. What happens when consciousness meets consciousness? When awareness recognizes itself in another? Jean-Paul Sartre once wrote that hell is other people. But what if he was only telling us half the story? What if the very thing that can trap us in anguish is also the doorway to the most profound liberation we can experience? Today, we're going to explore one of the most mysterious encounters to human beings can sear the meeting of two awakened souls. Not in some mystical, abstract sense, but in the raw, existential reality that Sartre understood so deeply. This isn't about romance, though it may include it. This isn't about finding your other half, because awakened souls know they were never half to begin with. This is about something far more rare, far more challenging, and infinitely more transformative. This is about what happens when two people who have faced their own nothingness decide to stand together in the void. To understand what happens when two awakened souls meet, we must first understand what awakening means in Sartre's philosophy. It's not a pleasant epiphany bathed in golden light. It's the terrifying realization that you are radically, absolutely free, that there is no cosmic script, no predetermined essence, no higher power writing your story for you. Think about the last time you made a truly important decision. Not what to have for breakfast, but something that shaped the direction of your life. Do you remember that moment of vertigo? That sensation of standing at the edge of infinite possibility, knowing that whatever you chose would define you, and yet nothing outside yourself could tell you what to choose. That vertigo is what Sartre called anguish, the emotional experience of recognizing your own freedom. Most people spend their entire lives running from this feeling. They hide behind roles, obligations, social expectations, anything that will give them the comforting illusion that they had to do what they did, that they had no choice. But an awakened soul has stopped running. Pause a breathe, they have looked into that abyss of freedom and accepted it. They have taken responsibility for crushing, beautiful responsibility for everything they are and everything they will become. They understand that they are not a fixed thing, but a perpetual choosing. A verb, not a noun. An existence that precedes any essence. Now imagine such beings, two people who have each wrestled with this fundamental loneliness of freedom. Two people who have each discovered that they are the author of their own meaning in a universe that provides none. What happens when their paths cross? At first glance, Sartre's philosophy seems to suggest that authentic connection is impossible. After all, he wrote that the other is always a threat to my freedom, always trying to turn me into an object, to define me, to steal my subjectivity and trap me in their gaze. Pause. Breathe. And there's truth in this. We've all felt it, that uncomfortable sensation when someone's perception of us doesn't match our own self-understanding, when their label for us becomes a cage. But what if both people understand this dynamic? What if both refuse to play the game of mutual objectification? When two awakened souls meet, something remarkable occurs. They recognize each other not as completed beings to be known and categorized, but as fellow freedoms, as ongoing projects, as mysteries that can never be fully solved because they are constantly solving themselves. Think of it this way. Most relationships operate on the logic of possession. You are mine, we say. Meaning, I have understood you, I have figured you out, I know who you are, and now I can keep you in this comfortable box, labeled my partner or my friend. But awakened souls cannot be possessed, because they possess nothing themselves, not even a fixed self. When two awakened souls meet, they offer each other something far more precious than love as possession. They offer each other witness. They say, I see you choosing yourself into existence, moment by moment, and I will not trap you in any definition. I will not pretend to know the final truth of who you are, because I understand that you are perpetually becoming. This is terrifying, because it means they cannot hide behind the comfort of being fully known. They cannot settle into the safety of routine identity. Each day, they must choose themselves anew, and they must allow the other to do the same. There is no script here, no map, no guarantee that the person who stands beside you today will be the same person tomorrow, because neither of you is a thing that remains, but a freedom that continuously transforms. But here's the paradox that Sartre understood but perhaps didn't fully celebrate. In this very uncertainty, in this refusal to pin each other down, something authentic emerges. Poza abrieve not the desperate attachment of two people clinging to each other to avoid their own freedom, but the courageous solidarity of two freedoms choosing to journey together precisely because they respect each other's fundamental solitude. Have you ever had a conversation where you felt completely free to think out loud? Where you knew the other person wasn't judging your half-formed thoughts, wasn't keeping a scorecard, wasn't building a case for who you really are, where you could contradict yourself, explore uncomfortable ideas, admit uncertainty, and still feel seen. That's a glimpse of what happens when awakened souls meet. They create a space where both can exist without pretense, where vulnerability isn't weakness but honesty, where change isn't betrayal but evidence of life. Sartre believed that life has no inherent meaning. We must create it through our choices, our projects, our commitments. For the solitary awakened soul, this is a burden and a gift. But when two awakened souls meet, something extraordinary becomes possible. They can create meaning together. Not a shared illusion, not the comfortable fiction that we were meant to be or destiny brought us together, but a shared project, a mutual decision to orient their freedoms in a complementary direction, to build something that neither could build alone, while still preserving the essential separateness of their individual existences. Think of two jazz musicians improvising together. Neither one controls the other. Neither one knows exactly where the music will go, but they deeply listen to each other's choices, and they respond with their own choices, creating something that belongs to neither one individually, but to the space between them. The music doesn't exist in either musician. It exists in the relationship, in the interplay of two freedoms. This is what awakened souls can create together. Not a fusion where to become one. Sartre would say that's impossible and even undesirable. Pausa brevi benedensi, a dialogue. A dialogue, a project that honors both their separateness and their connection, that acknowledges both their absolute freedom and their voluntary commitment. This isn't easy. In fact, it might be the hardest thing that people can attempt, because it requires both people to constantly resist the temptation to turn the other into an object, to reduce them to a comfortable role, to escape the anguish of freedom by pretending the relationship has a fixed nature, a predetermined course. When two awakened souls argue, they don't fight over who's right. They negotiate between two equally valid perspectives, two equally legitimate freedoms. When they commit to each other, it's not because they complete each other, but because they choose, actively, consciously, repeatedly choose to honor the project they've created together while maintaining their individual autonomy. And when they grow, they don't grow apart or grow together in some predetermined way. They grow alongside each other, like two trees whose roots may intertwine underground, but whose branches reach toward their own light. Each transformation in one creates a call for response in the other, but never a demand, always an invitation. Sartre gave us a concept called bad faith. The act of lying to ourselves about our own freedom, of pretending we're something fixed, determined, without choice. Most relationships are built on mutual bad faith. Two people agreeing to pretend they're stable, knowable entities playing predetermined roles. But awakened souls cannot sustain this illusion. They've already torn away the veil. They've already seen the void behind the mask. So when they come together, they meet in radical honesty. Not the cruel honesty of judgment, but the liberating honesty of mutual recognition. I see your freedom, and I will not ask you to deny it for my comfort. This means they will disappoint each other. They will change in ways the other didn't anticipate. They will make choices that disrupt the comfortable patterns. They will refuse to be who they were yesterday if that is not who they choose to be today. And yet, paradoxically, this is where trust can actually exist. Not the false trust that says, I know you'll never change, but the deeper trust that says, I know you will change because you're free, and I'm choosing to stand beside your freedom anyway. I'm not committing to who you are. I'm committing to honoring who you're becoming. So what happens when two awakened souls meet? They create a space where hell transforms into something else entirely. Remember, Sartre said hell is other people because the other's gaze objectifies us, traps us, defines us, against our will. But when two people refuse to objectify each other, when they meet as freedoms rather than as things, the hell dissolves. Not into heaven. Sartre wasn't interested in fairy tales, but into something rarer. Into possibility. They become mirrors that reflect not a fixed image, but infinite potential. When you look into the eyes of another awakened soul, you don't see yourself as you are. You see yourself as you could be. You see your freedom reflected back at you, amplified, celebrated, never diminished. They create what we might call authentic love. Not the possessive need that says you complete me, but the courageous acknowledgement that says you are irreducibly yourself. I am irreducibly myself. And between us we can create meaning that honors both our separateness and our solidarity. This is not the love of dependency, but the love of two people who could each survive alone in the absurd universe, choosing not to. Pausa, breve choosing. Each day, to orient their freedom alongside another freedom, to embark on a shared project while never losing themselves in the process. Duración en 35 segundos. Entonación profunda. Con peso emocional. When two awakened souls meet, they discovered that the unbearable lightness of being becomes just a little more bearable. Not because they escape their freedom, you can never escape it, but because they find a companion who understands the weight of that freedom and chooses to carry their own weight beside yours. They discovered that existential loneliness doesn't disappear. You are still fundamentally alone with your consciousness, your choices, your responsibility, but you are alone together, and somehow that makes all the difference. Perhaps Sartre was right that hell is other people when we relate to each other through bad faith, through possession, through the reduction of infinite freedom to manageable categories. But he also showed us, perhaps without fully intending to, that other people can be the antidote to hell when we meet them authentically. The meeting of two awakened souls is not a common occurrence. It requires two people who have each done the brutal work of facing their own freedom, their own responsibility, their own participation in creating meaning in an absurd world. But when it happens, it's a reminder that even in a universe without inherent meaning, we can create profound significance together. So, if you've ever felt truly seen by another person, if you've ever had a connection where you didn't have to pretend, didn't have to perform, didn't have to be anything other than the ongoing project you are, then you've glimpsed what Sartre's philosophy makes possible when taken to its most generous conclusion. Two awakened souls meeting is not the end of loneliness, but the transformation of it. Not the dissolution of freedom, but its celebration. Not the escape from responsibility, but the sharing of it. It's two people choosing to face the absurd together, creating meaning in the face of meaninglessness, building something beautiful in the void. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's as close to transcendence as existence can offer.